So let's talk about Disney's Hercules. You know, the one from 1997. It wasn't exactly the biggest blockbuster of the Disney Renaissance, right? But something funny happened over the years. It's built up this incredibly passionate, dedicated cult following. So today, we're going to go from zero to hero and figure out exactly why that is.
In this quote right here from a fan on Reddit, just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the whole vibe around this movie. I mean, people love this film. They will go to the mat for its music, its characters, it's just sheer energy. And yeah, all those inaccuracies with the Greek myths, for a lot of fans, that's kind of beside the point.
So what is the secret sauce? What's the magic formula? How does a movie that, let's be honest, plays pretty fast and loose with its source material, still connect so deeply with people, more than 2 decades later?
Okay, let's really get into it, because this is where it gets interesting. There's a real paradox here. You've got all this intense fan love, right? But then, get this. Hercules has a surprisingly low IMDb score compared to its siblings from that era, like The Lion King or Aladdin. For years, it was stuck in the mid-6s. That's not the sign of a universally beloved classic right out of the gate. So what's the deal?
All right, so I think the first big piece of this puzzle has to be its characters. They're just so unforgettable, and this was definitely not your standard Disney lineup of heroes and villains.
And you've got to start with the Lord of the Dead himself, Hades. Oh man, this fan just nails it. The comparison to Robin Williams as the genie? It's perfect. James Woods' performance is just legendary. He's not just some cackling villain in the shadows. He's funny, he's charismatic, and I mean, come on, he steals every single scene he's in.
Okay, so to really get what makes Hades so brilliant, we have to talk about satire. And look, satire isn't just, telling a few jokes. It's about using humor, irony, exaggeration, all of it, to make a really sharp point about the world. And this is where it all clicks into place. See, Hades isn't just some old god of the dead. The movie brilliantly reimagines him as a fast-talking, deal-making Hollywood agent from the 90s. And James Woods, famously, improvised a ton of his lines, going for what he called a car salesman sleazy vibe. The result? You get this incredible, biting satire of a schmoozy, hot-headed Hollywood producer. It's genius.
But it wasn't just about the villain. Let's talk about Megara, Meg. In an era where most Disney heroines were all about optimism and wide-eyed innocence, Meg was, well, she was something else entirely. And like this fan says, what makes us connect with her is how real she felt.
I mean, think about it. Meg wasn't sitting around waiting for some prince to save her. She was cynical, she was world-weary, she had this really tragic backstory that made her distrust pretty much everyone. She is the opposite of a damsel in distress. And actually, it's her journey, her sacrifice that teaches Hercules what it even means to be a true hero.
Okay, next up, we have to talk about the music. I mean, you just can't discuss Hercules without it. This is probably the second huge pillar holding up the whole legacy of this film. It's absolutely unforgettable soundtrack.
Look, Alan Menken was just on fire in the 90s, delivering hit after hit. But what he did with Hercules was so different. It was a really bold move. Instead of the usual Broadway show tunes, he went all in with a gospel choir. And this wasn't just a gimmick. It pumped this electric, joyful energy into the entire movie that felt completely fresh for Disney. You've got Zero to Hero, which is just pure bottled energy, and I Won't Say I'm in Love. That song is an absolute anthem.
And who's driving that whole sound? The Muses. They are the heart and soul of this soundtrack. They're not just some background singers either. They're the narrators of the entire film. They're literally the Greek chorus, guiding us through the story with so much style, so much sass and personality. And they're constantly breaking that fourth wall, talking right to us.
Okay, so we've got these incredible scene-stealing characters. We've got this phenomenal, one-of-a-kind soundtrack. But, yeah, we got to talk about the elephant in the room.
Yeah, the mythology. This is hands down the #1 complaint you hear about this movie, right? That it just completely butchers the original Greek myths. And, well, they're not wrong. But the story's actually a little more complicated than you might think.
Believe it or not, the filmmakers actually did their homework on a few things. They snuck in some surprisingly accurate details. I mean, the whole thing with Hercules strangling 2 snakes in his crib as a baby, that's in the myth. His mortal stepdad being named Amphitryon, that's correct too. And of course, he fought monsters like the Hydra, and he absolutely did journey to the Underworld. So they didn't just make everything up.
But then you get to the massive changes. And this is where the movie really just goes for it. The biggest change, by a country mile, is Hades. In the original myths, he's just
the ruler of the underworld. He's not the devil, he's not even really a bad guy, he's just a god doing his job. Disney completely transformed him into this jealous, scheming, basically Satan-like figure, just so the movie could have a clear villain.
So why make all these massive changes? Well, here's the thing. The original myths are dark, like really dark. In one of the most famous stories, a goddess literally drives Hercules insane, and he murders his wife, also named Megara, and his kids. Yeah. So for this to be a family-friendly Disney movie, they basically had to whitewash the whole thing. You know, take out all the really disturbing stuff and simplify the whole good versus evil angle.
So, okay, when you put all these pieces together, you've got the satirical characters, the gospel music, the, let's call it, creative take on mythology, you start to realize something. The movie was never even trying to be a faithful adaptation. It was going for something else entirely.
And here's a key part of it. This movie is incredibly self-aware. This review from back in the day points it out perfectly. Hercules was one of the first times Disney openly made fun of itself, of its own giant merchandising machine. You remember all that stuff? The Air Herc sandals, the action figures. It was all a really sharp, funny poke at 90s celebrity and consumer culture. And I think that's the real secret to its magic. Hercules isn't trying to be some timeless fairy tale. It's something else. It's a time capsule. It's a sharp, sophisticated, and deeply, deeply 90s pop culture satire. It's packed with references and modern characters and a kind of self-aware humor that was way ahead of movies like Shrek. It doesn't last despite being a product of its time. It lasts because of it.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last big question. We all know Disney's developing a live-action remake, but when you really understand that the original's magic came from this very specific, once-in-a-generation mix of satire, music, and pure 90s energy, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Can you ever really capture lightning in a bottle twice?